Hello everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Hannah if you're new here, and we're finally doing all of the end of year videos. I never film these until January 1st because there's always a chance something will make it on one of these end of year lists, whether it's the best or the worst. In today's video, I'm going to be going through the 10 worst books I read this year. Now, I have a whole series of videos throughout 2024 where I talk about the books that I didn't finish. And so if you want to know the books that I wasn't liking and decided to give up on, I have a whole bunch of videos for that. These are the books I actually finished that I didn't like. Sometimes there are books that you don't enjoy, but you recognize, it's just not for you. These are the books that, like, genuinely I'm like, no, I don't think, not just that these aren't for me, that these are bad and or have problematic elements or things that I would highly recommend steering clear from reasons. Let's not carry on. Let's just start talking about some of these books so I can get it off my chest and we can talk about some favorites next video. First, we have The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I gave this a 1.5 out of 5 stars, which is very unfortunate and sad for me because The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern was a 5-star for read. I absolutely despised Starless Sea. I in general have a really hard time with magical realism, and it can either really work for me or it can really not work for me. And in this is just an instance of magical realism that really didn't work for me, to the point where it was boring. So the whole book and the whole reading experience I had with this was, I'm bored, I'm not having a good time. And so I just didn't personally enjoy my reading experience of this one at all. I don't think, this is one where I'm like, I don't think it's necessarily a bad book. It just didn't do it for me, which is very sad. The Emperor and the Endless Palace by Justinian Wang is a 2-star read for me. This is a historical, it's a speculative, I'll call it a speculative novel. It's about a toxic relationship throughout centuries. These two men keep getting reincarnated in different scenarios, and finding each other and breaking apart and finding each other in different lifetimes, which sounds interesting, but this was pitched to me as a romance, and it doesn't have a happily ever after. I don't think that that's a spoiler to say. I think this is a speculative fiction novel talking about this toxic queer romance, and I didn't like it at all. I thought the writing kept me personally really emotionally distant from the characters, and it was really graphic in its descriptions, especially sexually, and not in a fun, smutty, titillating kind of way, in kind of a gross way, where it was just, I think the intention was to make you feel uncomfortable, and it did that, but then it was just too much grossness for me personally. So I didn't like the writing. I didn't like that this wasn't really a true romance in the end. So I gave this one 2 stars. Ghost Station by S.A. Barnes was a 1.5 out of 5 stars for me. This is a ghost ship, haunted ship station type thriller. I don't really know what this was. I kind of finished the book and I said, what was that? What did I just endure? It was boring. I didn't think it was scary. I didn't like the plot. I didn't like the characters. This is kind of the main character is like a psychologist, coming into this crew, and the crew doesn't trust her. Fair enough, she's a stranger. And I really didn't like the crew, and I didn't like our main character, so nothing about this worked for me. I really didn't like it. This is also a shame because I really liked the other book by this author. This author's debut was a 5-star for me. I really liked that one, and this one was an absolute miss. The Duke and I by Julia Quinn. She rapes him in this book, and it's seen as okay, and in my opinion, that's inexcusable, and it it's the same as in the show, and I didn't like that in the show either. There are no consequences for this assault, in my opinion, and she's forgiven for it a little too easily, and it's just as bad, if not worse, in the books. So this one's a no from me. I liked their relationship, but that whole plot and the assault was disgusting to me. That's a 1 star. Jamaica Inn by Daphne du Maurier is one of the most racist, ableist pieces of garbage I've ever read. I'm laughing because it hurts inside. This was terrible. I really liked Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I wanted to read other books by this author. This one was racist and ableist, and the female protagonist and the other female character in this book were heavily traumatized and abused and victim blamed, and our main heroine victim blamed her own aunt for being abused by her abusive husband. Yeah, it was totally the aunt's fault for being abused. So we don't condone that in this house. We don't condone victim blaming or the fact that the disabled character is the villain all along and the scapegoat is a Romani person. Just a lot of nope. A lot of nope happening with this one. I actively think this is terrible. Do not recommend. Do not read this. I do not recommend this. The next two, I'll just talk about these two at the same time. A Hunger Like No Other and A Lover Awakened. These are both paranormal romances I read for a list video I'm working on, and there was a lot of non-consent in both of these, and these are types of relationships that I don't. These two books highlight a relationship dynamic that I don't particularly enjoy, and it's typically like an alpha man and like a meek woman, and they execute them to different varying degrees, but it's just a romantic pairing that I don't enjoy reading, and just backed with this like non-consent stuff. These are both like 1.5 stars. Not for me, bro. We'll talk about the other classic I read this year that I really hated, which was Agnes Grey by Anne Bronte. Again, this is really disappointing because The Tenant of Wildfell Hall is one of my favorite classics of all time. And this one is such a disappointment. It is such a holier than thou, I'm better than everybody type of story. Like, there's beauty and pain in my suffering, and I'm better than everyone because of my suffering, and just, it's so, our main character is so on her high horse the whole time, and the side characters are like naughty children because it's like a governess type story, and the children are terrible, so you hate the main character for her attitude, and the children are terrible for their separate attitudes. There was, to me, nothing about this that I liked, and this one leans really heavily into religious themes and religious ideas, and I'm not about that, personally. Make the Season Bright by Ashley Herring Blake. Another huge disappointment. This was a 2-star read for me. This is a contemporary romance, sapphic contemporary romance, about these two women, and Charlotte is left at the altar by Brighton, and somehow she forgives Brighton, and they get back together and live happily ever after. And I don't think personally that this was a good romantic couple. I have a lot of empathy for Charlotte. She's kind of a emotionally distant, like kind of cold character. She doesn't like to reveal. She doesn't like to be vulnerable, and Bright kind of doesn't respect her boundaries with that and pushes too much. And I also think leaving someone at the altar is inexcusable. Even though they were young and it was just a mistake, it's brushed off too easily, and I don't think I don't forgive the main character for that. So this is a romance that was just not for me. I liked Charlotte as a character though, which is why it's a 2-star instead of a 1-star. The last romance and the last book on my list is All In by Simona Arnstead and Tara Chase. This is a Swedish contemporary romance about finance people, which there's a lot of finance talk in this book, first of all, which was actually kind of interesting. But this is about basically a bunch of high rollers in Sweden, and not to give, I think I'll probably spoil it, but basically there's a surprise pregnancy trope, and the guy's main arc is based on a sibling being raped, and so he makes the rape of a woman about him and his character growth, and that's his whole arc. And I absolutely hate that and don't think that that's okay, and I think that that's really cheap. And in the end, the sibling, the sister, the one who was actually harmed, is the one having to like comfort her brother and like make it better and see, you should forgive my rapist. And on top of that, there's a surprise pregnancy in this book, which I'm hating less and less the more I read it, but I still don't particularly enjoy it. And so like those two things coupled on top of each other made me pretty much hate this one too. But this was a 2-star read instead of a 1, because I do think there are some redeeming qualities here. Anyway, that is it. Those are the 10 books that I disliked the most. My worst books of the year for 2024. What were some books that you hated this year? Did you love any of the books that I hated? I would love to know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in another video of mine very soon. Bye!